Units, Chapter 9 covers movement. This is very applicable for you and your units and your soldiers because the IWQ includes a lot of movement, right? From the first standing position unsupported barricade to immediately dropping down into a prone supported position, reloading on your own, continuing into a prone supported position, reloading on your own, assuming a kneeling barricade supported firing position, reloading on your own, and assuming a standing barricade supported firing position. Chapter 9 covers how it should be taught doctrinally on movement. This includes movement techniques, forward movement, retrograde movement, lateral movement, and turning movement. In the .9 and the .40, if your unit specific has you conducting urban rifle marksmanship, where we are moving and shooting or moving then shooting, you may want to, if that applies to you and your commander's intent, to reference Chapter 9 movement along with urban rifle marksmanship. All right, students, so as we have been, go ahead and please tab and highlight. We will now move into the appendixes. Like we have talked about before, this is a very large doctrinal piece of information. We cannot cover this all in one day. You are getting a week or a month's worth of classes broken down into a 3.5-hour block of instruction. The other instructors for the Marksmanship Academy and myself have tried to pull out only the pertinent information that applies to the IWQ and things that you may need to reference at the unit level. One of those things being Appendix A, the ammunition. Until we move forward to the next generation squad weapon system and the new ammunition replacing the M4 and the 5.56 round, the current rounds being in place that you should all be familiar with is green tip Alpha Alpha 33 M855 ball ammunition. This visual aid displayed on the screen will show some of the differences between our old green tip ammunition, which is still to be used for training, and the new M855 Alpha 1 EPR ammunition, right? And I know a lot of you have already seen it. It's been in place. It's what should be used for the IWQ. It is what should be used if we can acquire for all training purposes. But of course, there are limitations as far as what's available. The biggest takeaways, it's a lot of information. And Sergeant Fulmer talked a whole lot about MOA and the sniper section of the things within the sniper TC that were brought into the .9 class. That all applies to you, and it is very good. Now we start diving into ballistics. We can again go on for hours and days and weeks on ballistics and the capabilities of this weapon system and our ammunition. But the biggest takeaway that I want you to see with the current employment of ammunition is the chamber pressure and velocity compare from the green tip ball ammunition to the Alpha 1 EPR ammunition. As we can see displayed, the velocity for the M855 ball is 922 meters a second, approximately 3,025 feet per second, traveling at 2.69 Mach. All right? The chamber pressure is at 55,000 PSI. If we look, the EPR is similar, but also different. As we can see, the differences mainly focus on velocity in these two rounds. In 922 meters a second and 3,025 feet per second for the M855 ball ammunition versus 960 meters a second and 3,150 feet per second, traveling at 2.8 Mach. I don't want you to get super confused. In layman's term, the best way that we can describe this is I want you to look back and think about the times when we were talking about optic systems, especially for the ACOG that has a BDC or bullet drop compensator, which is a rough, good estimation of where you can hold in your shot process to have the round impact at distance, is going to be off with the new ammunition. Those optic systems were not built and chronographed with the new ammunition in mind. So your holds that may be etched into some of your optic systems will not be exact. You need to acquire your dope or data on previous engagement and create a shooter's book for you and your soldiers underneath you to where they need to hold. And where we can find that out, and the best way we can find that out, is confirming at distance after we have grouped and zeroed during the IWQ. Again, soldiers, there are two pieces of information at the Marksmanship Academy that I would like you to go ahead and take out your phones again. Stomp, stomp, wink, wink. The first being that the magazines should and will be placed on the ground, used as support for the firing unsupported and firing supported firing positions. The second being, everybody take a picture of what's listed on the visual demonstration for the .9 appendix regarding M4 magazine comparison. As we can see here, starting on the far right, you as leaders and NCOs and officers need to go back to your units and tell your unit supply sergeants and your first sergeants that our equipment is outdated and needs to be destroyed and replaced, especially if we are using, as you can see on the far right, a metal magazine with a black follower. The .9 requires that you do not use this type of magazine, especially with the new ammunition. Moving from right to left on the screen, we have the metal magazine with green follower. The note is used through attrition. If you have these, if you see your soldiers, it is subpar equipment, but under emergency standards and until the supply sergeant or unit can acquire new, better equipment for you, your soldiers, and your units, this is still okay to use for the .9. I do not recommend it. Moving forward left more, we have metal magazine with tan follower. This is the current issue used through attrition. Again, the words used through attrition. Magazines are not permanent pieces of equipment at the unit level. They are expendable pieces of equipment. You need to ensure and help guide your units to replace and upgrade. If we are going to go back to the beginning of the class when we talked about overmatch capability, we are only hurting ourselves and our soldiers and the lethality of our units if we are not acquiring new equipment that has been pushed out per doctrine. Moving forward to the newest is the tan metal-bodied magazine with blue color follower. This is new issue equipment for improved capability with the M8551 Alpha ammunition. I'm going to break it down to you in layman's terms because we don't need to go into gunsmithing. The problem with the new Alpha 1 EPR ammunition is that the nose of the ammunition has a harder metal than the green tip. When the bolt is pushing the new round into the chamber, it is hitting the feed ramp. The new ammunition is damaging the feed ramps of these weapon systems. We will then, unless we get new equipment, need to repair and spend even more money on repairs of the weapon system when the right answer is to use the fifth principle of patrolling, common sense, and upgrade the cheapest pieces of equipment so that we are lethal and functional without having a weapon system go down. So take a picture, please. Here's the NSNs for each magazine. If you see black, throw it in the trash. You didn't hear me officially, that's not an order, but I would recommend you doing that. If you see green at your unit, throw it in the trash. If you see tan, throw it in the trash. Make your unit get the equipment that they have funding for annually. Even better answer, continuing on to magazines, is what's listed on the visual demonstration graphic on the screen. I have one in my hand here. We will pass it around. The Army is now authorized, and it's not now, this is the fourth iteration of the Marksmanship Academy. The Army has authorized PMAG Gen 3, Gen M3 PMAGs for use with NSNs for the United States Army. This magazine, displayed on the picture and in my hands as we pass it around, fixes the feeding issue with the new ammunition. This magazine from PMAG was developed only for the Alpha 1 ammunition, windowed or windowless. The NSNs are here on the screen. Take a picture. Continuing on to the Appendix Bravo ballistics. As we bring in Sergeant Fulmer, he will now talk about the ballistics.
Appendix B, talking about ballistics. This is going to be your slide that kind of demonstrates to you the difference between your maximum ordinate, your time of flight, your line of sight, and the axis of bore. Now, when you're looking at this imagery on this chart here, the discrepancy between the max ord, the axis of bore, and the line of sight is a little bit exaggerated, just so you can kind of physically see what's going on with your weapon system and what's happening to your bullet after you fire it. Now, looking at the solid black line, that's the actual path the bullet takes. Notice that the bullet doesn't magically start going up when you fire that weapon system. The weapon is naturally canted slightly up, not to that degree that you see here on this imagery, but it will be slightly canted up, and that's why that bullet is going to be traveling in a different path than what you're actually seeing through your sights. Now, with your line of sight, that's going to be the actual sight line that you use through your optic. Your sight line is going to be placed onto the target where you actually want your point of impact to be. Now, with the axis of bore, you can see how that's pointing up into the headshot into the facial area of that targetry. That is because that bullet is traveling along the ballistic trajectory, and it is rising and then falling onto that target. So while the barrel is physically pointing up towards that facial scoring area, the path of that bullet is actually going to go up and it's going to go down. Now, with that maximum ordinate, what that means is that's the max elevation that bullet achieves during that time of flight. And why it's important to understand what that is because if you're shooting at 300 versus shooting at 50 yards, you need to understand that the path of that bullet is going to be different at different areas or different distances along that range. So if you're not accounting for that, you could be impacting high, low, whichever way.
Soldiers, continuing on to Appendix E, zero confirmation out to 300 meters. One of the biggest key takeaways for this appendix is Echo 9. The most important step in the zeroing process is zero confirmation out to 300 meters. Having a 25 meter zero does not guarantee a center hit at 300 meters. The only way to rely on a 300 meter hit is to confirm a 300 meter zero. As you have learned from Sergeant Fulmer, the trajectory and bullet flight path of our ammunition and zeroing at 300 but confirming at 25, you taking care of your soldiers need to understand during the shot process that we talked about where your point of aim is and your hold. You can look back and find point of aim and hold. We may need to hold, and we will need to hold at different points of the targets during the IWQ to confirm a hit or to ensure that a hit is more probable. Appendix E. Who in here has shot slick at a range and that has been involved in the risk assessment from their commanders? Outstanding. Who in here has only shot in full kit? There is no right or wrong answer. Marksmanship is marksmanship is marksmanship. The AMU says shooting is shooting is shooting. Whether you're wearing kit or whether you are not wearing kit, it does not matter. You can reference this if you are getting pushback from your unit. However, we recommend you train as you fight. Always. Competitions are moving forward at the state through the international level to require all equipment to be worn on the combat side. In Appendix E, you can see here that it states, per doctrine, a common misconception is that wearing combat gear will cause a zero to change. Adding combat gear to the soldier's body does not cause the sights or the reticle to move. I do not need to continue any more than that sentence, period. Soldiers need to be comfortable in a relaxed environment. We need to ensure as leaders that they are able to operate at the least stressful environment, an IWQ, in their kit before we send them to competitions or downrange. Moving on forward to Appendix E, please mark and highlight for quick reference. We have talked about using your chain of command and going to your supply sergeants for new equipment and to ensure that our overmatch capabilities are met with this new equipment. This goes the same all the way down to something that may seem trivial, which is our zeroing targets. If we look at the graphic aid posted on the screen right now, moving from left to right, you will see the Alt-C course of fire. This used to be authorized for a weapons qualification that has reduced size targets emulating distance. This is no longer authorized. If you see this, if you see these targets or this practice happening, you need to step up as subject matter experts and say that this is wrong. You need to go through the IWQ per doctrine and not cheat the system. Moving from left to right, we have the most recent before our newest 25-meter zeroing target. This should not be used during the IWQ zeroing grouping portion. On the far right-hand side of the screen, we have the correct zeroing target for the M4M16 series weapon 25-meter zero. This target with its table listed on the bottom and a graphic training aid on the back in minutes of angle with our optics systems is a foolproof way that we can show you a mathematical equation to help zero your soldiers quickly and deliberately. So take a picture again. We will give you the NSN for the only zeroing target that should be used moving forward in the IWQ. Going through to Appendix E, some of you may have used to shoot a 3-round shot group per the old IWQ. The Army has now moved to 5. Can anybody tell me why? Because more data equals more better. So as we can see here, these are 5-shot groups. You need to ensure that during the grouping standard that your groups are marked and you help your soldiers, and we either use a Sharpie or a paint pen or we line and we annotate our groups so that we can get positive feedback for our soldiers. We talked about it before with the zeroing targets. Everyone again can take out their phone during this time. Please save this slide for future use to bring back to your units. This is the correct NSN to order the new zeroing targets and ensure that we're following the standard. After you've taken out your phones and taken a picture and written down the NSN, you need to get with us and you need to get with CTS and the SARTS team, and you need to get with your unit supply specialist to ensure that we are ordering the right target. When the Army switched over to the new IWQ, there were a few versions of this new target floating around. The new target is blank on the back of the target. Okay? Graphic training aids for overlays are added. Shooters, leaders. This concludes and we are wrapping up the portion of the .9. Again, myself and Sergeant Fulmer cannot cover everything. It is your job to take upon yourself to research and find what is applicable to you, your soldiers, and your unit. In Appendix E, when we close, there's a few things that I wanted to make note of for you to take back. Who in here has been in the Army and had a leader down on during weapons qualification or during training that is screaming, that is getting worked up, that is making it hard, that is not making it a fun, enjoyable experience for the soldiers? That is unacceptable. In the .9, I have pulled and highlighted, and we can reference a couple different quotes from the .9, including E38. Coaching requires a relaxed atmosphere with open communication between the firer and the coach. Echo 30. To determine the unobservable errors of shooting, the coach and the firer must have an open dialogue, and there must be a relaxed environment for learning. The firer cannot be hesitant to ask questions of the coach, and the coach must not become a stressor during firing. The coach must have the ability to safely move around the firer to properly observe. Continuing, Echo 43. The coach and the shooter must have a relaxed and open dialogue with each other in a relaxed atmosphere. Remember, if a soldier learns to shoot poorly, they will only be capable of shooting poorly. 3 times in the .9, it mentions an open, relaxed dialogue. You need to correct your peers, your subordinates, and your leaders. If you see unacceptable coaching techniques in the .9 and the .40, it requires experienced coaches and mentors. You need to seek out throughout your unit those soldiers, those NCOs, those officers that are competent and qualifying expert and attending the Marksmanship Academy and attending the State Adjutant General's Marksmanship match and shooting competitively on the civilian side. You need those to be coaches. You need to put them in positions of leadership to look out for those soldiers who have not done this or are just starting their process in their career. Thank you.